YouTube too.
Awesome. Are you wearing a SZ hat there?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I was going to say that.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll start with
cool.
that. So look at my cap here. Will you explain this cap, Yvette, and the significance of it? And there's the S. No, no, the SC is right here.
There we
And
go.
then you've got this. You got the camo back here behind this leather flag. What's the significance behind this cap? Because I love it. I wear it a lot.
So the camo is Dan's. They were Dan's pants that a couple of his buddies decided to. They found someone who does that particular design, and what he does is he cuts up the camo, the pant leg. He cut it up into a bunch of squares and or rectangles, I guess, and put them on the caps, and they're selling them. And the money that they're making, they're putting into the foundation that I created for Danny. But I thought it was a really cool idea that I was able to mail the pants. And they were like, "Do you have anything?" And I'm like, "I think I only have one pair of pants." But I think that it just, I just had them tucked away. So it was really awesome to see the
Yeah.
caps and to see the guys just, everybody's so excited about it. Even the family, like his brother Dakota, they're so excited. All
Yeah,
his
it's
cousins.
cool. I've had some people ask me about it. Johnny gave this one to me at the wedding. So I've only had it, since early December. But I've had two people ask me, and so I said, Johnny, where do I get these? And he said, you need to be in touch with Bob Sears and someone else, guys from the wedding. And so I emailed Bob, and he said, well, she only had one pair of pants. There's only a certain number of them. And he said the CCA bought a bunch.
Yeah.
So I need to get with, I guess, Michael Monica or somebody and see if what they're doing with them. But I'll put a note in here because, yeah, and it's the senior airman, Daniel R. Sanchez, or tell me the foundation.
Yes, senior airman, Danny Ray Sanchez Foundation.
Danny Ray Sanchez. Yeah. So I'll put that in there. Yeah. So people, if I can find out in time how to buy them, I'll put a link in the show notes.
And they initially made them in black, and the black ones don't have the SZ on the side. So when they went back to do this particular color, these beige and brown caps, I asked them, can they put the SZ on there somewhere? So those are even just a little more special than the black ones.
Okay, so the black ones were first.
Right. But I do have his top, and I'm wondering if they could do the same out of the top, because I think these are a lot nicer than just me having it stored away.
Absolutely. That's right.
And I could touch more lives that way than them just being on display in my den,
That's right. Do you know how much they're being sold for?
I have no idea. I just know that they handed me some and said, this is for you and the family, and we're raising money for the rest.
Okay.
So
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very cool cap, and I've been wearing it a lot since December the 2nd.
They came out really nice. I really like them.
So yeah,
Zach Bridges is the other guy. That Zach and Bob are the ones that.
Okay, good. And Zach was at the wedding too, right?
Yeah. Yes.
A little over a year ago, in November of 21, we were at a Combat Control Foundation fundraiser. That was a crazy event, and there was this guy there that seemed to be getting a lot of attention. And I know you and I are like, who should we know who this person is? You remember that?
Yes, I say this story all the time because everybody I know watches Yellowstone, and I don't.
Yeah.
That just goes to show we need to be more in touch.
I know. And so it was Cole Hauser, Rip from Yellowstone, and I had not seen an episode. I'd heard of it, but he was there, and dadgum, he raised some money that night.
Yes, he did.
Do you remember, like, one of the shirts that he had worn? Seems like it raised $35,000 or $40,000.
Thousands, yes, thousands of dollars, and that's when you and I were like, "Who is this?"
Yeah, somebody said he's on a TV show, and so we finally figured it out while we were there. Oh gosh, yeah. So Rip is a good dude, and he supports the Combat Control Foundation, and I know he was there again this year in Odessa. Were you there this year?
No, I was not, but it would have been nice to have gone back. I could have got a picture with him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I heard some funny stories about this past years of 2022. It might have been a little
Maybe there's a
more,
reason why we were not there.
yeah, maybe so.
Why was that?
Okay, so I wanted to ask you again. You don't have a preference then if I refer to your son Danny as Danny or Daniel? What?
Not at all. Either
Okay.
one.
All right. All right. I've always said Danny, although I didn't know him, but I've always heard you say Daniel. So I don't want to, say something that's kind of bothers you. But let's talk
No.
about your son, Danny. Why was he made for combat control? Why was that so good for him?
Oh my gosh. I always thought I had this crazy kid, this weird kid that nobody else ever had, since he was little. Everywhere I'd go, I always had him at the same campus where I worked. And I would, at the end of the day, I would always hear, you know what Daniel did today, and he was always just doing crazy stuff, getting in trouble, just very impulsive. And he always had this drive to just go beyond. So, people were racing, he'd have to be the one in front. If they were, whatever it is that we're doing, he just had to always outdo or just be that. He just had that extra energy and that spirit that just was nonstop. And I just think I always thought he was this crazy kid. And I thought nobody else has crazy kids like this because I couldn't see him anywhere else. But, once he grew up and I met a lot of the other combat controllers, I was like, oh, there's more crazy kids. They're just all spread out everywhere, and they had to come together. So I think, and just his impulsivity and his ADHD, and I think he was just made to be more than just a regular, just something regular. He was just made to be more. That was his nature.
Did he get in trouble more than an average, kid would?
Every day after school, I heard it every single day. Danny was under the table. Danny was on top of the desk. Danny was here. Danny did this. Danny said that, He was just super impulsive and wouldn't think. He did have a fourth grade teacher that finally came to me one day and he's like, do you know how smart this kid is? I think he's GT. And I'm like, I don't know what he is. He's driving me crazy. But he was, yes, often getting in trouble, mostly for his impulsivity, just doing things without thinking of the outcome. It took a long time for me to, kind of just get that part of it. I never wanted to medicate him though. I mean, I've worked with students all my life, so I just tried to do as much as I could on my part so I wouldn't dampen that spirit, because he had a really good spirit. He was just a really good kid. He was just always doing things without, thinking of what the next, the consequences or what the next step could be or would be.
When did he decide on combat control? At what age?
He was 18. He had just graduated and he went with a friend of his to visit the Air Force recruitment place. And matter of fact, I just talked to his recruiter at the last race. He actually made it out to the last race that I had for Dan, and was in town because he had since moved out of town, and he made it a point to come visit. And I remember him clearly. His name was Sergeant Gonzalez at the time. And Danny went with his friend. And I told him, don't get any crazy ideas. He's like, no, I'm just going with so-and-so. And I'm like, okay. And he came back with some DVDs so I can watch. And he's like, Mom, they say I'd be pretty good at this. And I'm like, I told you not to get any ideas. Well, I didn't even realize he was already signing up and taking the ASVAB test and everything else they had to do. He was already in. Finally, one day, Sergeant Gonzalez came to the house to talk to me about it and explained what CCT was. Actually, he was going for pararescue.
Okay.
Initially. It wasn't till we went to his graduation in San Antonio that he told me what it was, what route he was going.
Are you saying he switched to combat control during basic or when?
I think he knew all along, but he didn't tell me what it was until he went to I'm going to tell my mom the safest route, because he knew I probably would have, not that I wouldn't have let him go, but probably not with my blessing, you know.
Yeah.
But the only reason I allowed him to try out for CCT was, honestly, I didn't think he would make it. After what Sergeant Gonzalez explained to me, and that he wasn't committed just for trying, and then I thought, oh, good, well, he won't make it, he'll quit and everything will be cool and he can do something different.
Yeah. Was he already in pretty good physical shape?
Danny was a runner, a jumper. He loved sports. He just had this endurance, what he was not was a swimmer. He was not a swimmer. And that was one of the jokes he would call me. And he's like, Mom, they're making so much fun of me, because he knew how to swim, or he thought he knew how to swim. But that was the one thing that if it was going to take him out, it would have been the water.
Okay.
But other than that, he was just like his dad. They just, sports, always running, always just, he was just had this agility, just jumping, and he was doing parkour before parkour was a thing.
So what would he have done if he had have not made combat control? Yeah, I know he would have had to still give his time to the Air Force, but either if he hadn't gone in the Air Force or hadn't made combat control, what do you think he would have done?
We had already been talking to my cousin. My cousin's a chief in the fire department, and my dad was a firefighter. And so that was one of the things. He already told me he did not want to go to college. He didn't want to study anymore. And so that was one of those, it was during a time when they were literally taking young men into the fire department without the college training that they have now, because they were in such demand at the time. So that was the next route we were going.
Okay.
I could not see him as a firefighter right now. No.
He needed something with more action, huh?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So September 16th, 2010. I want to get to that, but first, when's the last time you talked to him? Phone, I guess via phone or Skype, or what was the method that you talked to him?
Oh, this is way before then. Well, his last visit, right before he was getting ready to deploy, I actually asked my family if they would pitch in and help me bring him out back to El Paso so we could see him before he deployed. And it was something that I just had this feeling, that I needed to see him before he deployed. So my dad and my sister and myself, we bought him a ticket and he came home. But that week that he was here, just spent with the family. The last day, before I took him to the airport, I remember asking my family if I could take him by myself, because normally it's everybody's following, all his cousins want to be with him. And so they allowed me that. And that was a big deal. Now that I look back, because I had an opportunity to tell him, before you leave, let me hug you, but don't let go until I let go. And he just kind of giggled. He's like, oh, okay, Mom, whatever. But I was able to hug him in the airport for the longest time until I was ready to let go. And that doesn't mean a big deal to people, but when I look back now, I was able to, that was my goodbye to him. But after that, the phone calls, I actually missed his last phone call to me. It was It was a Sunday evening, I believe. We were having a Bible study here at home, and the phone started ringing. And back then it wasn't cell phones, it was satellite phones. And he was calling the house, the landline. So I raced around the corner to try and grab the phone, and I missed the call. I knew it said Hawaii, from Hawaii satellite phone, blah blah blah. And I knew I missed it, and it just broke my heart. I was like, oh my God, please call back, please call back. And he didn't. And I was just I could kick myself. I was so upset that I missed the phone call. And about an hour later, my sister called, and she's like, Danny called. He sounded really tired, but the kids got to say hi to him. And it just broke my heart that I missed it. And before that, I called him. It was right before his last mission. And I want to say it was about August the 20th, around that time. Or maybe right after, right? It was probably about August 31st, maybe a couple of weeks before he passed. I actually called him because it was his birthday, and I sent him this box filled with letters that kids from the campus where I work, they all wrote letters and wished him happy birthday and sent birthday cards. And I sent him a big box of just all kinds of stuff, all his favorite snacks and t-shirts and all kinds of stuff to him. And so we talked very briefly about him receiving it. Told me that he read some of the letters, et cetera, et cetera. So it was very brief. It was probably about 2 weeks before he was killed.
Okay. What province was he in?
He was in, let me see if I get this right. It was something with a T. Hold on. it was in Oruzgan province, but what was the name?
Taron
Oh
Cow.
my God. There you go. Taron
Really?
Cow.
Oh, and he was in Oruzgan too. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I should have looked up on one of his because he's got a Bronze Star, right? Bronze Star with Valor.
Yes.
I should have looked that up before I talked with you. Okay. So when did he get into country?
Oh my goodness. I want to say July. I can't remember the exact date. It was the very beginnings of July.
Okay. Was he supposed to go there, or was he supposed to go somewhere else?
Okay, so he was actually supposed to go twice before. First time he got sick, he got really sick, like sore throat sick, and then something happened and he couldn't make it out. Second time, he cut his fingers. So I want to say that Johnny took his place because he cut his hand and needed stitches and had to wait for that to heal. So this was his the third charm,
Okay. I remember hearing something about the hand now.
Yeah, and this was his very first deployment.
Okay. So he got in the country about July of 2010. Mm-hmm. So September 16th. That was a Thursday. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thursday so will you tell us now, Yvette, how you found out about his death?
Well, the reason I told you that story about the airport, because I always said I felt really horrible about not feeling his death. People always say, oh, I felt something wrong. That day was a day like no other. I was at work. My son was there at work with me. I worked at a campus where I had my younger son. And it was just a normal, regular day. I didn't feel anything different. But that day was a very stormy day. It was really raining hard that day. And so my younger son, Dakota, got in trouble for not completing an assignment. So I got on his case and said, you better get to the computer lab and you better finish. And as soon as this rain lets up, we're headed home. So I want to say it was about 4:30, almost 5 o'clock when we decided to leave campus. And we were driving home. The rain had just stopped a little bit. But on our way home, looking over to, and I had, I was getting on poor Dakota. I think I even hit him on the leg because he was talking back to me. And then I started explaining to him, look at the sky. Do you see the double rainbow? There was a big double rainbow in the sky. And I kind of paused, kind of pulled over a little bit, and I snapped a photo of it. I'm like, look at how beautiful that is. I've never seen it complete clear from one end to the next, and it just was this big, beautiful, bright, really bright double rainbow. And I took a picture of it. And so I started to explain to Dakota the significance of the rainbow and what it meant and what God's promises were, that after the storm, he wasn't going to, it was this promise to take care of the land, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I kind of go into that. And we got home and I told Dakota, get to working. And my mom had just made dinner, and I sat down in an area where I could see the front, out towards the driveway. And I saw two cars pass kind of close by, and I kind of stayed wondering, like, what was that? And then I saw a lot of movement through the window. I couldn't make it out, but I saw that there was a lot of people, and I thought, I wonder what's going on outside. And just then they rang the doorbell, and my dog started going crazy. So I had to go. I was like, I'm going to go put her outside. And it stopped raining anyway. So I put her outside. And as I'm shutting the back door, walking towards the front room, I hear Dakota shout out. He was really small, so he had to run to my mom's room to look through the window. And I could just hear him say, Mom, there's a lot of soldiers at the door. And that basically just stopped me mid living room. I just stopped. And I was like, my heart just sank. And my mom opens the door, and I could hear, at the time I didn't know who it was, but I could hear them ask, are you Yvette Duchesne? Which is, my, and I could hear my mom say, no, I'm her mother. But as she's saying this, I see them all with the red berets. And I just knew, my feet were, I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. In my mind, they pushed themselves through the door. I could see this, when I look back at it, I know that that's not what happened, but that's how I saw them coming in to the door, through, kind of moving people out of the way. And there were, let me see, I think there were five of them, maybe six, that made their way into the living room and asked me, are you Yvette Duchesne? And I don't even remember answering. Yeah. But I remember them telling me, your son was mortally wounded in Afghanistan. And my mom says that I just screamed no, but I don't remember screaming. I just remember seeing just black boots. So I was on the floor, and I remember them having to help me sit on the couch. But I just remember those black shiny boots, their dress boots. They couldn't tell me anything else until my sister arrived. Danny's specific instructions were not to tell me anything. As if I was alone, I needed his aunt needed to be there with me. So they couldn't give me any specifics until my sister got to the house.
And she didn't have a clue. Y'all were just waiting for her to come home? Okay.
She doesn't live here. So what happened was my mom had to call my other sisters and family and let them know what happened. I don't recall anybody. I didn't call anyone. I just remember sitting down, and I had my hands in my head in my hands, right? And every time I look up, there were more people there. So my neighbors saw what was happening. They were there. All my neighbors just started showing up at the house. I didn't even call them. They knew. My neighbor across the street just knew. And so they were there. And then her family started showing up. And every time I'd look up, there would be more people in my house, just filled. My house was filled with people that day.
How long do you think that the combat controllers stayed, the ones in uniform?
They stayed there till they came to my house probably about 5:30, 5:45 in the evening. And they didn't leave my house till almost midnight.
All of them.
Um, two of them stayed till about midnight.
Okay.
The rest left. I want to say they left probably about 3-4 hours in, because we had to wait for my sister. My sister couldn't drive after my mom told her what had happened. She was on the floor crying, and she said she couldn't even put her shoes on. So her husband is a high school coach, and they were barely going to get started with their game. So she had to call him, and he had to race back to the house to pick her up and bring her to me. So it took a while before she got back. Yeah. And then they could give me the specifics.
Well, what did they tell you then?
Initially, just that he was shot. But once she got here, they were a little more specific, that he was shot in the head. He was doing one of the voting, they were providing security for voting site or something to that. I can't remember specifics, but something to that, that as soon as they landed, he was shot by an Afghan insurgent. But that was the majority of what they told me.
Okay. Do you remember any of the questions that you or other family asked them?
Just what happened. My sister Monique, when she finally got here, she rushed in and she yelled basically at them, and she was like, "You were supposed to take care of him. Why didn't you take care of him? What's wrong with you?" I had to calm my sister down because she was, I think, more agitated and upset than I was, I think, at the time, or just reacting differently than I had. But we had to calm her down because she was really upset about the whole thing.
What about I've only heard this story once, and I cannot remember now if it was from you, like in October of 2010, or if this was from someone else. But the guy who shot Danny, did they tell you then what happened to him, or did you find out later?
I found out much later. See, Danny was attached to a group of Army Green Beret, right? They didn't get to come visit me till April, when they finally got back.
Wow.
Back home. So the second they got back home, they literally got in a van and drove 23 hours to come pay their respects to me and to Danny at Fort Bliss, the cemetery. So when they finally came in, I was able to ask one of them, "Can you tell me what happened? I want to know." I think he held back a bit and wasn't very specific, but he gave me more details and kind of told me how the helicopters were separated, and his landed more in a valley and theirs landed further away. He said that the guy who shot Danny was in the helicopter with them. They were giving them giving new people a ride, or I don't know, something to that effect. But that they got him. They took care of the guy that shot Danny. There's a lot of things that I'm sure there's so much more that initially I wanted to know everything. And when I started hearing some of it, I decided I don't want to know everything. I just kind of want to let some things just be a mystery to me. Yeah. Yeah.
But Danny, they had landed and he had gotten out of the helicopter.
They got out. They were basically unloading the helicopter. What do you call those big
Was it a Chinook or a Huey or
it was probably
Apache AH-64?
I have no idea. I think it was a Chinook. They were unloading. is what I heard. And that they were basically, because he was, I don't even know if he even, I guess since they weren't prepared, they got him at a very vulnerable state where they just started unloading these heavy boxes and things, equipment and stuff. And the other chopper was further away. So there could be a lot of things that I could theorize, I guess, or just come up with my own ideas, as to why they were separated, or why the helicopters were not together, or why it took the others longer to get there. But I would rather not. I would rather just let it be.
Okay.
That mystery to me, because
Yeah.
I could drive myself crazy and try to investigate and let that eat me, up inside. But no.
Yeah. I understand. Well, and I mean, I've got a few questions, but if you don't want to talk about it, just tell me. Okay. So,
Okay.
so first of all, this guy, Danny knew him, I guess. Had he already been working with him for a few days, a few weeks? Do you know?
I just know they were new. So to me, that could mean at that last minute, they were like, can these
Okay.
guys come with you type of thing.
Okay. And why did he choose Danny? Was it because he wanted to kill other Americans, but he was killed quickly, or was Danny he wouldn't have been the only American there with him?
No, there was the team was together. It was the team was together. So there were two choppers though. So I know there was his, they were separated, of course, but there were more Americans, the Green Berets that were with them. One of them did get hit on the shoulder. Another did get hit in his inner thigh, and they had to take him to, they did medevac him to Germany. But I think Danny was the one with the, with the radio, and probably seemed like the person to shoot. But there were bullets flying. He wasn't the only one hit, but he was the only one that was fatally wounded. He was shot in the head. He was shot in the foot. He was shot in other places. I don't recall. But I do know that it wasn't he wasn't just shot once.
Okay. Man, yeah, you just wonder how long. I think about things like, how long had that insurgent been planning this?
Mm-hmm.
Was this
Exactly.
all
And why let them on at that last minute? Why didn't they get checked out, further?
Mm-hmm. I remember Bobby Bonello showing me some pictures from his first deployment, and he had a lot of pictures of of Afghans, some military age males, I guess, guys that he was living with some locals for some reason on that deployment, and he was just saying, "Look at these guys! Like, how could we trust him?" He didn't trust them, and nothing happened. But you've got these guys that fight by your side, and plenty of them are great, loyal men, I think. And so, I don't know, maybe Danny, he was just so used to, he'd already been fighting with some other ANAs or something. And so, I wonder if he could have easily thought, okay, hey, here's another group, and no big deal.
Or if someone tells you, hey, we're gonna give these guys a ride, you're gonna do it under the assumption that they've already been checked out.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
who would do that?
He had, yeah. I mean, I can't imagine him having any reason what to worry. It's just so bizarre, because I believe that was the first situation, Yvette, that I'd heard of in the war personally, just because I didn't keep up with a whole lot of is that a green on blue? Is that what they call that? I get my colors mixed up, but basically friendly on friendly, I guess, on us, kill. And okay. Yeah, I always heard that the guy was killed quickly. He was taken care of.
right after.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I guess they were all caught off guard,
sure.
and so the fight was on as soon as that happened. But Danny was one of the first hit, and the guy that also got shot with Danny, his name is Andrew Mick is his name, and he recently reached out to me, and he's the one who shares more of the story. But there's a lot of times where he wants to share, and so I allow him that. But there's times where I'm like, oh, I don't think I want to hear anymore, because I feel like it puts me in I don't know, just in different. It puts me more like if I'm actually there watching it, and that's hard, So sometimes I don't know what's worse, imagining it or really hearing what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's your little boy. I know
Mm-hmm.
it's tough.
Yeah.
Who all was there? Who notified you? And how many of them knew Danny?
So Don Stevens, Matt Silos, they knew Danny. Don knew Danny more, I think, than Matt did. Um, Matt was on blue team, I mean, on silver team, I believe. Danny was on blue team with Don Stevens. At the time, it was Major Larkin. He was Major at the time. So it was Larkin that came in. Someone named Lawless, his last name Lawless. And then there was a chaplain.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if Lawless knew Danny or if they knew of him, but I know for sure Don Stevens knew who he was.
Yeah. Well, at the time, or maybe just looking back, I mean, what was did having people there who knew him, was that important to you?
Yeah, it was after that initial evening, Don and Matt traveled with me to Dover, Delaware to receive Danny's body. They took us that night. It was probably about the next morning, like early. They came and picked us up, and we flew out to receive Danny's body. But I was able to talk with Don, and it was good to hear the stories. When he started talking to me, I remember stories that Danny would tell me, and they called Don Stevens Silverback because he was just huge, just massive and huge. And I remember stories Danny would tell me about Silverback, right? And he would say, Mom, he's massive, and I always mess with him. I want to take him, and that was Daniel's, just his personality, his character. And he would mess with these guys and say things like, "Oh, I could take you, and he would mess with them. And Danny was little, he was skinny, and he was probably like 5'10", very thin. And so hearing the stories, it made me feel like they knew who he was, and Matt was able to tell me a few stories as well, but I think Don is the one who knew him the most and was able to share um, some of the things that he's like. I had to make him dig a hole because because they were mouthing off, and then he had, after the hole was dug, he's like, now what do we do? He's like, fill it back up, So just things like that. I was, I got to hear some funny stories about him getting in trouble again, and again and again, as usual,
Yeah.
Danny style,
So
So
from
just, I
the
think, truly, go
no,
ahead.
you go.
No, I was gonna say, I know for sure it was Don that shared a lot more of the stories.
Okay. So from the notification, you get up early the next morning and go to Dover. I'm sure that wasn't a direct flight. Did you fly commercial?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a draining, flying itself is draining. Then you've got the ceremony there, as awful as that is. What were those next few weeks like for you?
I honestly don't remember. I think the whole year is a blur. I was moving and breathing, but not really living, I guess. My support system, my family, my neighbors. I have very good neighbors. I call them family. They've always been here for me. They just did everything for me. Every time I'd come out into the living room, my house was filled with people, and they didn't leave me alone. They were just here. They were just taking that. Member people coming out of, just people showing up that I hadn't seen, and people I didn't even know, friends that I hadn't talked to, just coming to my house, bringing food, bringing crazy things, paper products, and just all kinds of stuff, just filling my house with plants and flowers. And, it was that I remember. Specifics, I can't recall, like the whole first year of from the moment that they talked to me. It's just been a blur,
Yeah.
But I went to see you and I'm kid. I don't remember that, but
Well, because you had a funeral to plan. You had a memorial service at Hurlburt, I guess, is that
yep.
where it was?
Mm-hmm.
I know that we met you at the reunion in October of 2010 down in Florida. So you were back for that. You probably had other things,
Then
probably in El Paso.
then we had another one in North Carolina. Do you remember that one? In July. It
Yeah.
was July when Johnny got injured. We were in North Carolina for that.
Yep. Yeah. Okay.
There
So
was
wait a minute.
mm-hmm.
So we
it,
were there in July. Wow. Yeah. When Johnny was injured.
mm-hmm.
Is that when you were there at?
Yes.
Oh,
They did
gosh.
a service for for Mark and Danny at the same time in North Carolina.
Gosh. Yeah. That's when we found out about Johnny. Okay. So there were I remember a lot of events going on with the Air Force. And then, there were other things I know in our hometown, in our area. So you were probably pretty busy with several things going on.
Mm-hmm.
How did you make it? I mean, I know you got your family, your support system. I guess you just coasted through somehow, just unseen beings. Is that kind of what it was too?
Yeah, I've always leaned on my faith for everything, my divorce and the death of Danny's dad, and I've just always leaned on my faith in God. And so I know that I look back now, I know that it was God's strength in me, not me by myself. There's no way. There's no way we could do it, especially alone without family. So God, they place our family, they're angels, here placed around us, strategically placed. They're there when we need them, at that moment. And then on the times we don't even think we need them, they're there,
Yeah.
you know. And I was in Florida when we got word about Mark, and we were there for a memorial for Danny in
Yeah.
Florida.
That was a bad couple weeks for
It
sure.
was horrible. It was horrible because I was there when they were getting their phone calls about Mark. We were having a birthday dinner for Danny's girlfriend at the time. It was her birthday. And they were getting the phone calls about Mark. And I knew just by their faces when they got the phone calls, the guys, or the text message, I guess, that they needed to meet. I could see it in their faces. And they were still trying to be nice and, have dinner with us. And I just knew that it was not good.
Yeah. Um, Dakota was what, 10 years old?
He was 10 years old.
How do you think that? And by the way, when I told my wife Rosalind that, hey, I saw Dakota and his wife too, at the wedding, and you, and she's like, it still sounds weird to hear Dakota and his wife, because last time she saw him he was 10.
That's yes.
Now he's married, he's all grown up. But how did he deal with Danny's death there, the first, at least the first little while?
So initially I didn't realize this, but he just, not that recent, but told me, he's like, Mom, I thought Danny was coming to surprise us. When he first said there's soldiers at the door, that's what he thought. He thought it was his brother coming home to surprise him. In the middle of the whole thing, I remember I tell you, I was just beside myself, but in the middle of it all, I remember looking up and going, where is he? And turning and seeing him standing against the wall, watching everything play out. And I just remember just tears pouring down his cheeks. And I was like, oh my God, come here, come sit with Mom. And him coming and sitting with me and not being able to absorb it all. But when we went to Odessa, Thad, I don't know if you recall, you asked him, and I know he had a couple of drinks in him at the time, but do you recall you asked him, as a brother, tell me what you felt, and he started talking, and I thought, that's the first time I had heard that much come out of him. Him just saying that he remembers a lot of what we say about him, because when Daniel left, Dakota was 6 years old when Daniel left to the service. So at that point to 10 years old, we saw him just, a handful of visits. And I don't remember a lot of things when I was 6, so it's really hard. And so him talking to you about it, and talking to you about that day, and talking to you about the moment since, it was a real eye-opener for me. And I kind of, I'm glad that you asked him, and I'm glad that he was able to share with you, because he's never really shared that much with me. But I see him as, he tells me, Mom, I remember the stories because you all talk about the stories often. He remembers a few things that Daniel used to do to him. One of them was duct tape him on the door outside the house, on my wrought iron door. He duct taped Dakota. Or he would hang him by his underwear on the doorknobs, and, and give him a permanent wedgie, and so he remembers those things, and funny things like that. But I think, bottom line, he was the initial reaction. I think I never really dove deeper. And when he spoke with you in Odessa that time, he really said a lot more than I'd ever heard him say about that moment, about him thinking it was Annie trying to surprise us, and then just being disappointed, the outcome.
Yeah, I remember us talking, and I don't remember what I said, but I just remember, I feel like I probably asked a lot of questions, and I could tell he was thinking, but I also kind of thought, you know what, I could have made him and you uncomfortable, so I could have gone too far, but I was really curious, and so that's why I was whatever I was saying. But yeah, I remember him kind of having, like, you know what? Oh yeah, I haven't talked about that before. I haven't thought about that before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a good time. There was a lot of noise, a lot of music, but I enjoyed it anyway, sitting there with y'all.
Yeah, I did too. I think that was our reason for going, because you and I didn't get to speak.
That's right. Yeah.
But that was, I think, all in all, Mike LaMonica was like, I am so sorry. I said, no, don't be sorry. This was what we needed to do. It wasn't for us to come and talk. It was for us to, or for Dakota to talk, and, just to us to listen.
It was wonderful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As a Gold Star mother, Yvette, what do you say to others, that are grieving for, whether it's death or some other type of grief? how do you help others?
Hmm. I like to share I call it my testimony with them, because I literally was in a point at a point where I was, when Daniel left, I was kind of, I guess, feeling sorry for myself, trying to do that empty nesting by myself, and be a single mom and take care of Dakota and worry about Daniel, on my own. And I think I was feeling sorry for myself. And when everything happened, I kind of use it as my testimony. I tell people, I'm just a normal, everyday single parent trying to make ends meet, and trying to make things work. And God has just given me, you know, he says, I am your strength when you're weak, and I share that as my testimony to tell others, first of all, not to even ask, don't ask the whys, because it won't be answered, and
Yeah.
we'll just go crazy, we won't get those answers till we visit, heaven. But until then, we shouldn't ask the whys. We should just understand that, those special moments need to be cherished and talked about, and our loved ones need to keep being talked about, and shared with others, so that their memories, so that their lives continue to, those memories just live. Their lives are not forgotten, you know. And so I share that. I started doing a grief group here at home. I do a lot of Bible studies out of my home, but I started doing a grief group through my church after Danny passed. And I've met a lot of wonderful parents that have lost their children, and I've made really good friends. And to this day, they're my really good friends, and we share that. And it's good. It's a good, it helps us to value people in
Yeah.
a different, where we don't really see the value of people, until you lose someone really close and it hits, you know, and you just appreciate the people more, the moments more, everything like that. So I use that a lot I call it my testimony, and I share that with others.
Yeah. What was the effect on you and on Danny? You said his dad died when Danny, I think, was 5, and his dad was
Mhm.
23. Is that right?
Yes,
So then
yes.
Danny was 23 and he was killed. And what was the effect on your Danny when his dad died?
Dan was 5 years old. I remember telling him, because at the time, Daniel's dad lived with his mom. And it was, we were, I was 18 when I had Daniel. So we were very young. We weren't married, but we were still together on and off, and at the time, I moved back home because I was going to college, and it was really a struggle for me, um, getting my son back and forth, trying to go to college, and so I moved back to my mom's house where they could watch him for me while I went to school. And so that was one of those moments. So we weren't physically in the same house, but we were still together. So when I got the news, his grandparents were literally at my house picking up Daniel. And for some reason that day I said, no, just leave Daniel here. He's fine. He's comfortable. He's playing. And I'll take him to you. I'll come visit on the weekend. And so they left, and my mom was very upset. She's like, those are the grandparents, they should just get to take them whenever. And I said, no, mom, no, he's fine. And about an hour later, I get the phone call that they saw the crash on the way home and stopped. And they knew that one of their sons was killed. They didn't know who. They just saw the sheet on the floor because they were both ejected.
Oh, their
And
two
meanwhile,
sons were in there
there were
together?
two, they were together in the accident, but one of them was transported already to the hospital.
Okay.
And Daniel's dad, Raymond, was the one who was laying on the floor. And so they didn't know who it was. They just knew it was one of their sons. And so I think to myself, Daniel would have seen his dad that way. And so I'm kind of glad that I had made that choice. But it took me a couple of days to tell him. I didn't tell him right away. I was trying to figure out how to tell him. And I finally, he was in kindergarten, so I decided I had to tell him. It was right after the new year. It was in January when his dad was actually killed on January 16th. The 16th of January in 1993, I believe. And Daniel was also killed on the 16th. Did I ever share those numbers with you?
You didn't share the 16th. No, I don't remember that. No.
Daniel was killed on the 16th, and his dad was killed on January 16th. And their birthdays are Danny's is August 30th, and his dad is June 30th. And they were both 23 years old when they died. But Daniel was little. He says he remembers things like at the time, like I remember my dad would take me for ice cream, and I remember my dad playing with me, and I remember my dad, and playing baseball with me and basketball with me. So he remembered some of those, but he was 5. It was really hard. I had to keep Ray's memory alive for Danny, as we grew up. So Daniel and I were very close. It was just he and I for all these years before I had Dakota and before I, got remarried. So it was just Daniel and I. So we were very, we were like 2 peas in a pod. We were very close.
Yeah. What do you want people to know about Danny?
Oh my gosh. just you just fell in love with the guy. The second you met him, you were just friends. You knew he was just a genuine, very kind-hearted. He was crazy. He was crazy. He was just a crazy kid. But to know him was to love him. He was just had the kindest heart, and he loved kids. Every time he'd come, all the kids would hang all over Danny. He'd be carrying one on one hand and carrying another kid over here. All the kids loved Danny, and he had so many friends. I've met so many people since to be like, I only met him once or twice, but he was just the coolest guy, and his smile, he was always laughing. Everything was just positivity, and just always fun. He did not like confrontation, as far as like people fighting or arguing. He just wanted everybody to get along and have a good time. He was just a cool kid. So you would have just, he was automatically your friend.
And he did have that big, awesome smile.
Yeah.
That everybody talks about.
Yes.
It's true.
And he was always smiling. I would hear it from teachers and even myself. Like, I'd be like, what are you laughing at? You're getting in trouble. And he would be like, oh, okay. He was just always smiling, always.
What do you say? You have a saying about
smile forever.
Smile forever. Yeah, that's it.
That is what is on his tombstone. Smile forever.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was always smiling.
What about we were recently at Johnny Yellick's wedding. Is that, well, let me just, I guess, preface it with this. Weddings are kind of hard for me now, or especially they were, because it's like, well, these are, of course, Johnny's getting up in age himself too now, but when I used to go to weddings after Mark's death, it's like, hey, these are young guys, and Mark should be here, or Mark should be getting married, and so weddings are kind of hard for me now. But do you think that way now? Danny had a serious girlfriend, or was he engaged? Can't remember.
He was not engaged. She lived with him. They lived together, and he had told me that after this deployment, if everything went well, and he came back home, everything was good, he was going to propose, but
yeah.
He wasn't engaged yet. Yeah, it's hard to see everybody's life moving on, and you think or all the kids, all the kids, they, it's hard to keep track of everybody's kids. There's so many kids, but
yeah.
All of his buddies, they send me pictures, and, I see them. I'm very proud of them. And it kind of gives me hope. Like, Daniel would have been doing this right now. Daniel would have been married with children, or Dan, you would have been getting near retirement soon, that those type of things where um I know what you're saying though. You look at it and you're like, all those missing, those memories that we're not going to have. So yeah, that is tough. It is, but it's also good to see all of them, to be able to have a reason for them to gather and just I like to see the guys because it reminds me of Danny so much. Just their behaviors, the way they act. It just brings back a lot of good memories.
Well, they seem to keep in touch with you, both the Air Force and the Army guys.
Hmm.
That's great. I'm glad. And you had an awesome picture at the wedding and that photo booth thing that we had, you and all the guys there. It was a good one.
Yeah, they're so cute.
Well, what about the foundation, and what are you doing now since his death, and the caps are going to that foundation? What are your fundraisers, and what is the foundation for?
So I do the 5K memorial race every year, and I do it on Labor Day weekend every year. Why Labor Day? It's an extra day off for a lot of people. It's gives it opportunity to come in town for those Danny's buddies that want to come in. Also, it's the midpoint between his birthday and the time he was killed, so I kind of chose that day. It's around that time frame. And so what I decided to do, and I did it early on, is I just spoke to people and I said, I want to do something to honor memory, and to keep his memory alive. And so this one lady, knew a guy that puts these races together, and she said, why don't you try it? I'll talk to him and see what happens or what comes up. And ever since then, he just plugs me in for the next Labor Day weekend. And he's even told me, he's like, Yvette, most memorial races don't last 13 years. He's like, you're going on 13 years now. And he's like, so you should have more sponsors by now. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. But I initially thought, what, I'll do this 1 or 2 years, 3 years. And then I'm like, okay, after 5, that's it, I'm done. And then I thought, okay, after 10 years, I'm done. And then the pandemic hit at that point, and I was like, okay, nothing more. And then he suggested a virtual race. And then after that, it was like, keep going, and I'm like, I guess I can keep going till I can't anymore. But all the money that I raise right now goes to the high school where he graduated from, in forms of scholarships. And so
And that's
every year,
Montwood, right?
Montwood High School here in El Paso, Texas. Yeah, I've given away 3 to 5 scholarships every year, and they range from $500 to $3,000. It just depends on what monies I've raised, and I'm able to present it to the students when they're practicing for their graduation, and I'm able to talk to the students. And I like that because I'm able to share Danny's story. Danny wasn't a straight A student. He was, he was ADHD. So one class would be an A, and then the next class would be like a D. And I'd be like, what's wrong with you? Can't you? Then the next 6 weeks, that D would be an A and the A would be a D. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So, but he did love to run. And that was one of the things where, I thought, he didn't run because he wouldn't wake up in the morning and go running, but he just had this knack for it, and the guys will all tell you, Danny just ran, and he would smoke cigarettes the night before, and then he'd be running the next day without fail, passing everybody on team, and he just did it. He just had this energy in him. So I thought, why not? So that's what we start off with. We also have other fundraisers, like food fundraisers here in El Paso, Mexican food. We do enchilada dinners, and we raise a lot of money with that. I have the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW ladies. They're willing to help. They just get everything ready. They all know what to do, their place, and they just help me out. I actually make jewelry, and I call it Gold Star Jewelry, and I just sell it. And whatever monies I make, I just put back into the foundation so we can have enough for scholarships for the next year.
How do people find the jewelry?
I'm afraid to even put it on because I haven't been making it. So I
Well, if
guess
you want me to, I'd be glad to. You just
I
tell me.
will. I will. I think ever since I went back to work, I haven't made jewelry in a while, but I do a lot of just like bracelets and necklaces or matching sets, real basic, but I'll take them to like the Christmas fairs or, whenever they have places where I could set up a table and I'll sell things like that. When I'm ready, I'm going to get a bunch ready. I'm going to retire again soon and I'll
Yeah.
start making more.
Have you ever thought about, or has anybody approached you about a knife, an SC knife or anything like that, or a gun?
No, well, I think so. My dad has a gun that says CCT on it, but it has Danny's. When did we do that? Oh my gosh, my mind is blank, but it was in a glass case. It says CCT on it. I want to say it has his SZ, his initials on there. And my dad has that. They gave it to me, but I gave it to my dad. But no. And then I don't know if did you do the memorial three gun memorial?
Mm-hmm.
Was Mark one of the
Yeah, I think
recipients?
2019, I think, was marked, but none of us could go up there for it.
Oh, okay. So Danny was one of the honorees this past October. And I went up to North Carolina with my sister, and they gave me an axe with his
Oh,
name
cool.
on it.
That's
It's a
cool.
sharp axe. Like I was even like, how am I going to take this back home? But they mailed it to me, so it's beautiful. It's really nice.
Oh, that's
But
cool.
yeah, I have all kinds of,
Would you
you
send me a
know,
picture of that just so I'd just like to see it.
oh my gosh, it's awesome. Yes, I would gladly.
I love blades. I love knives and axes and
Do you? This
oh
thing
yeah.
is sharp. I should go get it right now so you can see it. You want to see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right here. And it's super sharp too. And so I don't know who made it. They told me who it was, and I can't remember.
Well, those
But
guys at Memorial Three Gun are great.
so it came with this stand. I don't know if you could see the whole thing.
Wow. Yeah.
And then it has his name. Can you see it? Or is it?
Yes. All right. And then let me see the handle. Can you go on down? That's cool. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, we're gonna have an axe throwing contest soon. I was so scared. I'm like, I don't even know where to put this thing.
Who makes that? Is the name of the blade maker on there on the back of the up
That's what
top?
I was. No, that's what I was wondering.
It's not.
It just says Memorial Three Gun on here, but a guy was. They even told us his name, but it just says remember, honor, memorialize.
Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna have to ask. I'll ask Tara, who made the axe. If you want that information, I can get it for you.
Oh,
But
I love
yeah,
it. Yeah, I love it.
it's really cool. And I was like, how am I gonna carry that back?
Yeah. Well, what
But
else, Yvette?
I do just whatever I can do to raise money. I had a web page for him that since has been taken off, but I have a Facebook page that
Oh, so you don't use the website anymore?
I'm trying to get it back on again. The lady that helped me last year or 2 years ago, I handed it over to her because I had someone tell me, oh, she's awesome with marketing and she can make the web page look really nice. So I gave her all the information And now that I try to go in, I don't have a password. She doesn't remember a password. So it's been challenging. I'm trying to get that information back on there again.
I'm looking as we speak.
Is it on there, or does it still say?
What's the URL, because it's not pulling up.
I have it under, so it's
wasn't it like Daniel Ray Sanchez?
Our hero DannyRay.com. It's a
Danny
.com.
Ray or Daniel Ray?
Danny Ray. Our hero Danny Ray altogether.com.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not working now.
So I need to see. The thing is that I'm not tech savvy.
I got you. Yeah.
She's like, I could really do your web page. I know somebody can help you. And I'm like, sure. So now I go back and I'm like, I don't know if I need to pay for it. How do I, pay to keep it going? They call me, they're like, well, what's the password? I give them the password. They're like, that's not the password we have. So it's a mess right now. I'm trying to still get back into that. And then I talked to the lady, and the lady that was helping me is like, I don't know what I did with all that information. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Well, maybe somebody listening, or maybe somebody with CCA or CCF has knows someone who could help you take care of this. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we have somebody, but I mean, I am not an IT guy, Yvette, but I can do the basics with the website. So I guess they did build it for us, and I just maintain it now. So actually I could put you in touch with someone if you need it. You just tell me. With the people that don't do ours, they're great.
I need to find out how to get control of it again, and then I'm gonna be like you, just maintain it,
Yeah.
And not worry about somebody else doing it, because then you run into this situation.
That's right.
And so basically I'm kind of stuck with that right now. And that's because one of the guys called me and he's like, what happened to the webpage? And I'm like, I didn't know. So I had to go back and check. But yeah. So that's been a situation that I'll get to it eventually. But as far as fundraisers, that's pretty much all we're doing right now.
Okay. And the information for the 2023 race is not out yet, is it?
No, as a matter of fact, we start putting it out. Right now, I'm working on getting the applications and getting all of that in before that. I usually start the beginning of each year, putting out the information for the applications,
the scholarships,
for the students, right? For the students to apply. This year, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to kind of expand it a little and try and reach more people. So what I'm going to do this year is get in touch with, El Paso's really big. Get in touch with at least the district that this campus belongs to, and put it out there that the biggest team, whatever team it is, the largest team from that campus would get an additional $500 for their team. Just to try and put it out there further, just get other people involved. And that way the scholarship's not just for the one campus, but because I've had people ask me, why is it just Montwood High School? And I'm like, that's where he graduated from. But, I can try and expand it a little and just say, bring the largest team will get $500, and maybe do something a little different. That way they can use some of that money for their team. Yeah. Just to try and make it bigger,
Well, you're doing great work with it's just you, just about. So
it is.
Is there anything else you want to say in closing?
No, I mean, I appreciate this. I'm like, why does that one talk to me? Like, you talk to really cool people.
I should have talked to you a long time ago. Ross said, have you not interviewed her? I said, no, I don't know why. I should have done it years ago.
Oh, no, I just, I know that there's been a lot of sadly, CCT, memorials that we don't want to have to attend anymore. But something about Mark's, I guess it was just the timing, the 2 weeks after Danny's death, and just kind of like the same group of guys, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, but something about Mark's death and Danny's death just really stands out, I guess, a lot. And I always, I always keep you all in prayer, and as I do with all the other Gold Star families. But I don't know, something about just Mark's death right after Dan's just really, it I don't know if it was just the time, the timing of it just made it that much more meaningful, as as a as someone to just, just your family itself, just being there. And I've met a lot of Gold Star families that are with the Army, because here at Fort Bliss, that's more what they have here, and
Yeah.
they don't have what we have. And so I'm very blessed that Danny and Mark were a part of this group of this small group of heroes, because I think it means that we get to memorialize them in a better way. And you truly never forgotten, because the guys are just so awesome. The brotherhood that they've developed is just so wonderful. And I think that, I don't know, I just find something, just a special place in my heart for you all, and, your parents, and, just the families.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we are fortunate to have such a close-knit group and the support. Yeah, shoot, I got a call from Michael and Monica the day before Thanksgiving about my nephew, because my nephew had a serious accident, was
I
in the
know, I
hospital.
saw that.
So I mean, it's pretty cool that they do, keep up. And I guess hopefully we'll see each other again at some event sometime soon, maybe. And but Danny is the reason. Danny's death is what made war real to me, Yvette, and I've told you that. And that when Mark, when we found out, and Mark had put that on Facebook, he just like RIPSZ, because I didn't know his name, and I know Mark had waited when he could put that out, because I didn't find out till Saturday. Danny was killed on a Thursday, and it shook me, and I was distracted that whole day. I've messaged Mark, and this was a Facebook message, and what happened? Were you with him? Yada yada, and he finally replied back, and so that it hit me. It shook me then to find out that one of his teammates was killed, and I really realized, hey, this could happen to Mark too. So here we are, and anyway, it's been an honor having you. Thanks for talking about Danny and his death and his life, and your life, a little bit of your life since. I wanted to talk about your health, but I guess you're doing better from the lupus.
No. Well, I started a new infusion, a brand new FDA approved medication that is like one of the only approved lupus meds that's come out in the past 10 years. And so I go once a month for an infusion. And this is barely my second infusion. So I'm hopeful. I haven't gone to do my blood work yet, but I'm hopeful that this one's going to work. And that's basically where I'm at with that. I feel okay. I feel fine. I'm able to, I've been in pain so long that that's my norm now. So any day I wake up, I'm like, I can get out of bed without, walking funny. I guess those are good days. But I've been feeling good. I mean, I've been really good. And I know that I wanted to go back to work because I felt like that's what I needed to do. I needed to be busy. And I love being able to go to work. And so that has really helped me out a lot as well. I just got over a really bad bout of bronchitis. Um, and so I have a few more tests coming up, but other than that, I'm feeling good. I'm doing well as good as can be expected.
Yeah.
But lupus isn't, it's nothing fun, and I think a lot of it is stress related. So anytime those stressors go up, the
Really.
flare-ups come. So I just got to keep my stress levels down. But I've
Hmm.
been doing well. I've been doing good.
Well, tell Dakota to stop making you stress out.
Not to stress me out. You know what? I don't even talk to the kid. He's he's still on his honeymoon. He just came back from his honeymoon. As a matter of fact, him and his wife went to the Bahamas, and they just got back recently. So I figured in a couple of years he'll start giving me trouble again. He's still happily married right now, so we'll see how that goes.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
But
Yvette.
I've been very blessed. I'm very blessed with my boys. I'm very blessed with all my new sons. I tell people I lost one son, but I gained so many more.
Oh yeah,
And I'm blessed with people like you that we just keep their memories alive however possible. And it makes for us to be able to just live that next day. We just live day by day.
yeah,
So, but I appreciate your time. Appreciate that you wanted to even talk to me. That makes me feel good.
yeah. We got to get the word out there about Danny too, and the
Yes.
run, and so I'll put that.